الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين صدق الله العظيم. Our subject is entitled The Prohibition of Riba in the Quran and Sunnah, which is the title of the big book. But in order to get people to muster up the enthusiasm to take on this subject, we have to first explain to them the importance of the prohibition of riba in Islam. And so we wrote this book first and used this book to entice them to come to this book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down revelation. It was the Hajj, the first and the last and the only Hajj that the Prophet ﷺ performed. The Khutbatul Wida was finished, and the revelation came down in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Al-yawm akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-Islam deena. The job is now perfected and completed. The Prophet ﷺ returns to Medina, and there are now about 81 days now left in his blessed life. In this last stage of his life, after Allah had sent down that revelation, two important events now occur. The first one is the visit of Jibreel alayhi salam, which we discussed right here in this masjid about 2 weeks ago. When Jibreel alayhi salam came in the form of a human being, sat down in the masjid in front of the Prophet ﷺ and asked 5 questions. The first 3 questions pertain to the deen and its very substance and heart, al-ihsan. The last 2 questions pertain to the end of history. And in response to the question, what are the signs of the last day, the Prophet ﷺ gave 2. One, that you'll find the naked, barefooted shepherds competing with each other in the construction of high-rise buildings, and you'll find that a slave woman will give birth to her mistress. In both of these signs, there is very clearly implied the factor of riba. The second event was the last revelation to come down. On the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, and it is in Sahih Bukhari, he says, this is the last revelation to come down. What I recited in the second rak'ah. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 279, 280 and 281. In it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought a close, finale, to a series of revelations which had been coming down on the subject of riba. Now this is the last. And in this revelation, he not only completes the subject, he also declares war. Allah and His Messenger now declare war on those who still resist the ban on riba. And if Allah and His Messenger are at war, and we are home sleeping, something is wrong with us. If Allah and His Messenger are at war, and we are not at war, something is wrong with us. Indicating that it is the obligation of the Islamic State, the Muslim community, it is the obligation of the Muslim community, when once they have control over territory, to wage war for the eradication of riba. What is this riba? And why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chosen to send down this revelation as the very last revelation to come from him. The first one came to Adam alayhi salam. And since Adam alayhi salam, revelation has been coming down. For imma ya'tiyannakum minni huda. From time to time, revelation will come from me to you. And true indeed, they came. Until eventually the last prophet came. And now revelation is coming down in the last book, the Quran. And now in the last book, this is the last revelation. Why did he choose the subject of riba for the last word from him? The answer very clearly is apparent in his declaration of war against riba. The answer is that herein lies the greatest danger of all. The greatest danger of all. If you allow this door to be opened, and the poison of riba were ever to be injected into you, you will be paralyzed. And your enemies will be able to take control of you. Do not let this door be opened. Resist riba. After that revelation came down, riba was eradicated in the economy of Medina. He said in the last revelation, if you turn away from riba, وَإِن تُبْتُمْ فَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ, you are entitled, that is the money lender, to the return of the principal sum which you had lent. In Medina, the money lender made his livelihood through lending money. I pass on $200 to you, and you are obliged to return $400 to me. Time is what is responsible for the increase. Today this is known as lending money on interest. In other words, the money lender argued that time equals money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejects this riba, lending money on interest. He rejects it in a beautiful ayah of Surah An-Najm, in which he says, let me give you the meaning of the ayah first before I translate it and before I quote it in the Arabic text. He says, if you didn't plant, you cannot reap. Where did he say that? Is there any such verse in the Quran? Huh? If you didn't plant, you cannot reap. You can only reap what you planted. Where did he say that in the Quran? Come on, somebody. Huh? All right. That was the meaning of the ayah. Now let me give you the ayah. Surah An-Najm. وَأَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. That man is not entitled to anything other than that for which he worked. Yes, worked. If you did not plant, you cannot reap. If the money lender lends, he is not planting, no, but he's reaping because his money is increasing. If Allah says that you cannot reap unless you plant, and the bank is reaping without planting, How do we explain it? If Allah says you cannot reap if you did not plant, وَأَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى, you cannot reap if you did not plant. And the bank is reaping without planting. How do we explain that? Simple. The bank is reaping what others are planting. The bank is reaping what others are planting. The banker, the money lender, is living off the sweat of others. He's like a pimp. He's like a pimp. The money lender who today is dressed up in civilized language and is called a banker is like a pimp. He lives off the sweat of others. That's what he is. This is oppression. This is dhulm. That one people sit down very comfortably in luxurious homes by the seafront and have swimming pools and drive Mercedes-Benz motor cars and go on vacations to Disneyland, while the rest of the people must work like jackasses in order to allow them to live the affluent life. Do not allow this poison of riba to enter and take control of the economy, because when it does, a blood-sucking predatory elite, a blood-sucking predatory elite. What's a predator? An animal that lives off the flesh of other animals. A blood-sucking predatory elite will now take control of the market, and they will suck the blood of the masses. And so when an economy is based on riba, the rich will keep on growing richer, while the masses grow poorer and poorer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to this riba, and he uses a methodology of a stage-by-stage explanation, and he uses a stage-by-stage process through which to eradicate riba. In the first stage, he teaches the subject. The first revelation came down in Surah Ar-Rum, somewhere in the middle of the Meccan period, halfway before the Hijrah. And in that first revelation, the language is still mild but sufficiently strong to wake us up to how important this subject is. He says, وَمَا آتَيْتُمْ مِنْ رِبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. And that which you put out, that which you invest as a riba transaction, that your capital might increase in the wealth of others, meaning at the expense of others. فَلَا يَرْبُو عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. It will not increase with Allah. Allah is displeased with this. وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن zakat. This is, remember, Makkah. So now zakat in Makkah is charity, voluntary charity. That which you give in charity. وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ. And when you give that charity, you do it seeking Allah's pleasure. فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. It is this transaction which will lead to multiple increase with Allah. And so he begins to teach the subject of the prohibition of riba through a contrast between riba and charity. Between riba and charity. He disapproves of riba, but he approves of charity. And so we are now forced to think, what is there in the contrast between riba and charity which helps us to understand what is riba? I spent about 3 or 4 months driving my car all over New York asking this question. It took me 3 to 4 months before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His kindness finally allowed me to understand why. But it took Yusuf only 5 minutes. Where's Yusuf? It took Yusuf only 5 minutes. Yusuf is from Chile. Santiago probably took the Shahada, became a Muslim. He's with us now. It only took him 5 minutes. What is there in the contrast between riba and charity? The answer is that in a perfect act of charity, not the kind of stuff that France gives to Indonesia, no. In a perfect act of charity, not aid as imperialism, no. In a perfect act of charity, you give and you take nothing in return. That's charity. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. When we feed you, when we give you, we do it for Allah's sake. We do not seek from you anything in return. We do not even demand that you should show gratitude. This is charity. A perfect act of riba is exactly the opposite. In a perfect act of charity, you give and you take nothing in return. In a perfect act of riba, you take and you give nothing in return. When we understood that while we're in Makkah, we are prepared now for when we arrive in Medina. When we arrived in Medina and then revelation came down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the one who consumes riba, when he stands before Allah on the last day, you see him. If you take a look at him, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see someone who is behaving as though he has been driven to madness by the touch of shaitan. How did he land in this mess? Allah explains. This is because he argued, إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَى. He arguing that business and riba are the same. Allah responds, He says, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Oh no. Allah has made business halal, but He has made riba haram. And so now we are forced into the second lesson. The contrast in the first instance was between riba and charity. The contrast in the second lesson is between riba and business. What is there in business that is not there in riba? The answer is that it is in the essence of a business transaction that you must admit of the possibility of either a profit or a loss. If that is not there, it ain't riba, it ain't business. If it does not admit of the possibility of a profit or a loss, it ain't business. And so risk-free investments, that ain't business. It is in the essence of a riba transaction that the possibility of a loss is eliminated. The money lender is immunized from loss. He can only make a profit. He cannot suffer loss. In consequence of which, riba does not qualify as business. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains in Surah Al-Anfal, the spoils of war are being distributed, and He sends down the laws of distribution. And then He explains that these laws of distribution of wealth have been enforced, كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ الدُّولَةَ بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ, that wealth may not circulate only amongst the wealthy. An economy in which the rich are permanently rich would be an economy in which the poor are permanently poor. If the rich are permanently rich and the poor are permanently poor, that's slavery. That's economic oppression. And so He wants wealth to circulate through the economy, so the rich can become poor and the poor have a chance to become rich. One day for me, one day for you. When money is lent on interest, what happens? What is the implication? It's not just only living off the sweat of the jackasses. It's more than that. It's more than that. How does money circulate or wealth circulate through an economy? Is it a function of government to effect the circulation of wealth through the economy? Oh no. Any government which attempts to do that would be a government that will corrupt the economy. It is not the function of governments to distribute and redistribute wealth. Well then, who distributes and who redistributes wealth? The answer is Ar-Razaq. وَيَرْزُقُ مَن يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. He is the one who distributes and redistributes. How does He do it? Apart from the laws of inheritance, apart from the compulsory charity tax, zakat, apart from the voluntary charity that He urges us to give, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala effect the distribution and redistribution of wealth? The answer is through the market. Through the market. When we enter into business transactions, then we embrace R-I-S-K, risk. We can now suffer a loss, or we can be blessed with a profit. From the time we open the door of risk, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can take from some and give to others. And He has said, don't close this door. Don't close this door. Because if you close this door, He is not going to open it. No! When that door is closed, because the money lender is now immunized from loss, the implication would be that in an economy based on riba, wealth will no longer circulate through the economy. Around the world today, for those who have eyes to see, and who don't spend their days and their nights eating halwa. Around the world today, for those who have eyes to see, the economy around the world is precisely this economy. And they call it the best model of an economy it has ever been the misfortune of mankind to experience. This is the best model? Is this the best model? Have you no shame? Do you think we have the brains of a jackass? An economy in which wealth no longer circulates through the economy? An economy in which the rich are now permanently rich and the poor are now imprisoned in permanent poverty, and you call that progress? That's not progress. That's a new economic slavery which has descended upon mankind. The Prophet ﷺ went on to teach more about the subject. He said, you know, he was sent to teach the Quran, وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابِ. He said, some people might argue, well, actually what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is prohibiting is exorbitant interest. 25%, the credit card stuff, no? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not prohibiting a reasonable amount of interest. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ now teaches the subject, because he is sent لِيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابِ. What does he say? You will find all of these ahadith in my book. He says, if you give a man a loan and he offers you a meal, couscous, don't eat it, because that's riba. Unless he used to offer you a meal before you gave him the loan, in which case you can eat it. He went on to say, if you give a man a loan and he offers you a ride on his animal, today Toyota Camry, don't take it, because that's riba. Unless he used to offer you a ride before you gave him the loan, indicating whether the riba is large or small. 25% or 1%. Muhammad ﷺ has made it haram. When he has made it haram, you should not come and attempt to make it halal. No, not even if you are Biman Bank in Bangladesh. Don't make it halal if Allah has made it haram. The Prophet ﷺ went on to teach the subject even more. He said, if you meet a man coming to the market to sell his goods, and you buy his goods from him before he could enter into the market, a truckload of oranges, and they're sold by the basket, maybe wholesale price $10 a basket, and you buy his oranges from him before he could enter into the market. The market price is $10 a basket, but he doesn't know that. You know it. You meet him outside of the market and you buy it from him for $8 a basket. When he enters into the market, then he learns. He could have gotten a better price in the market. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that's riba. Why? The Americans have a beautiful expression for this transaction. What is it? You ripped him off. You ripped him off. A transaction based on deception, through which you get a profit that you are not entitled justly to get. That is also riba, said the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Of all the rip-offs that have ever occurred since Adam alayhi salam set foot on earth, the biggest rip-off of all is the one that is occurring in our miserable lifetime, while our scholars are eating halwa. You're going to have to forgive me tonight if my language is a little bit harsh, because I think the language up there is going to be 1,000 times harsher. 1,000 times harsher. I think that Allah's anger must be red hot, boiling hot with this ummah. So you're going to have to forgive me tonight if my language is a little bit harsh. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, I leave behind me two things. So long as you hold on to them, you will never go astray. The book of Allah and my sunnah. The book of Allah and my sunnah. And his sunnah is not only the bed. It's a nice sunnah, isn't it? His sunnah is also money. Money. Money is also his sunnah. What kind of money did he use? Do you know the hadith? He said, it's a very famous hadith in Sahih Bukhari. It is seldom properly understood. He said, gold for gold, silver for silver, wheat for wheat, barley for barley, dates for dates, salt for salt. Like for like, if it's gold on this side and gold on this other side, like for like must be equal for equal. If it's dates on this side and dates on this side, like for like must be equal for equal. Other than that, it's riba. What is common to all the 6 things mentioned in this hadith? You will not find this analysis in Abdullah Yusuf Ali, I'm afraid. A British technocrat, that's what he was. What is common to all 6 things mentioned in this hadith? Gold, silver, wheat, barley, dates, salt. Is that they were all used at some time or the other as money. If gold and silver was scarce in the market in Medina, they could use dates as money. So they were all used at some time or the other as money. The second thing which is common to all 6 is that the value of the money is in the money. They all have intrinsic value. Intrinsic value. The value of the money is in the money. If there's a transaction involving, what is this noise we can hear? The wall.
Nothing, Ranjan.
Tell the wall stop making noise, please. Yeah. If it is gold on this side and gold on that side, the same money, then like for like must be equal for equal. Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam with a basket of dates, and he offered him some dates, and they were very high quality dates. Bilal, he said, these are very high quality dates. Where did you get them? Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu replied, he said, O Messenger of Allah, I had two baskets of inferior quality dates, and I exchanged them for this one basket of superior quality dates. Bilal, he said, this is the essence of riba. What you should have done was to sell your two baskets of inferior quality dates and take that money and buy the one basket of superior quality dates. Why was it riba? Because dates were used as money. So if you have dates on this side and dates on that side, there must be an equal exchange. But Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, if you know the answer, put your hand up. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he exchanged one camel for 4 camels. Bilal exchanged one basket for 2 baskets. He exchanged one camel for 4 camels. And Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu exchanged one camel for 20 camels. And it was not riba. Why not?
It was not including the 6 camels of this kind.
Because camels or animals could never be used as money, correct? I work for the month and you give me my salary, a goat, taking the goat home. When I reach home, my wife asks, where's your salary? I said, it died on the road. Or the boss gives me my salary, and the next day I go back to the boss, I say, boss, problem with the salary, salary has fallen ill. He said, but when I give you your salary, it was healthy. So animals cannot be used as money. Because animals were not used as money, you could exchange one camel, an adult she-camel, pregnant, for 20 baby camels. Alright. This is money in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is money which is sunnah money. One day, Europe was attacked from inside, and a Europe which had become Christian suddenly lost its Christianity. While Europe was Christian for those centuries, Christian Europe fought a ferocious battle against riba. Yeah, Christian Europe against riba. In fact, one of the best books on riba ever written was written by a British Sheikh. What was his name? Shakespeare, correct. William Shakespeare. Which book? Which book? Merchant of Venice. Merchant of Venice. I will not have the time in this lecture, otherwise you have to give me 3 hours, to explain to you the brilliance of William Shakespeare in Merchant of Venice. But you'll get it, that analysis is there in my big book on riba. In Merchant of Venice, you will see Christian Europe in its attempt to ensure the prohibition of riba. There is another book, not as famous as William Shakespeare's, but this one is also a classic. Take a note of it, you might want to search for it in the library. The name of the book is Religion and the Rise of Capitalism. I would make this compulsory reading in Darul Uloom. Oh yes. Religion and the Rise of Capitalism by an author whose name is R.W. Tawney, T-A-W-N-E-Y. And in this book, Tawney records the Christians struggle against riba in Europe. But when the French Revolution occurred, the back of the Christian church was broken in Western Europe. And when was it broken in Eastern Europe? Which revolution? Bolshevik Revolution. How come we're only getting the answers from this corner? The Bolshevik Revolution broke the back of the Christian church in Eastern Europe, in Russia. When once the back of the Christian church was broken in Europe, the Jews were delighted. The Jews were delighted. Because the Christians had been waging a terrific war against the Jews for centuries in Europe. We will not allow you to lend money on interest. And the Jews always wanted to lend money on interest. Why? Because they had changed the Torah. I think I explained this to you. They rewrote the Torah. The Torah that had come down from Allah had prohibited riba. But they changed it, and the Torah now says, in as many words, that it is haram for a Jew to lend money on interest to another Jew. But it is halal, he can lend on interest to those who are not Jews. Go and check it out. Go and check it out in Deuteronomy, in Leviticus. Go and check it out. I have all of these quotations in my book for you. So they are the money lenders. They changed the word of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to this in the Quran and points out that they had in effect changed the Torah. Where did he do that? Suratun? Which surah? Suratun Nisa. The language, as I said, was very powerful language. فَبِظُلْمٍ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ طَيِّبَاتٍ أُحِلَّتْ لَهُمْ. In that ayah, he says, وَأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَا وَقَدْ نُهُوا عَنْهُ. They were taking riba despite the fact that they had been prohibited from doing so. So this is how we know that they changed the Torah. Now, with the French Revolution, an economy based on riba emerges in Europe for the first time. And then with the Bolshevik Revolution in Eastern Europe, the possibility for Eastern Europe to be embraced by riba is also now open. But the banks in Europe, they don't just lend money on interest. The European economy not only produces this curious creature called a bank, the bank does something more than lending money on interest. What the bank does, and this began in France with an Englishman, what the bank does is to start issuing paper as money. Paper as money. And then when government saw that the banks were getting rich issuing paper as money, then the governments took over the paper. Then Europe sent her armies, and European armies shamelessly, at the point of a sword, those who say Islam was spread at the point of the sword, they're the ones who went with the point of the sword and conquered the rest of the non-European world. And so a white world order emerges at the point of the sword, in which Europe now rules the world. When Europe took over the rest of the world, one of the most important things that Europe wanted to do was to dismantle the system of real money and replace it with paper money. And they achieved it because the scholars of Islam were eating halwa. Europe would not decolonize and hand over Egypt to Muhammad Naguib and Jamal Abdel Nasser for the drums to be beaten, we are independent, and would not hand over Indonesia to a fellow named Ahmad Sukarno so the Indonesians can jump for joy, we are independent now. And they would not hand over Malaysia to a fellow named Tunku Abdul Rahman, and they would not hand over Pakistan to another fellow named Muhammad Ali Jinnah, etc., 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 etc. And all the natives start dancing, drum beating. We have something called independence. While Europe is laughing its head behind the wall. Look at them, blind like bats. Europe would not decolonize until Europe was ensured that a new financial system was in place, in which real money was now replaced by paper money. At the beginning, when paper money was introduced, it was redeemable for gold. What does redeemable mean? Yes, exchange. In the United States of America, until the 1920s, you could take 20 US dollars in notes, paper, and go to any bank, and you can ask for 1 ounce of gold, and you'll get it. If a man wants to cut your throat, he wouldn't be so silly as to show you the sword, the knife. He has to hide the knife first, all right? Get you to come close. So when paper money was introduced, it was redeemable in gold. And the banks that issued the paper money and the governments that issued the paper money, they gave their word that this is the value of the paper. And they even print on the paper, guess what they printed? In God we trust. Let me show you. Here is a US dollar note, and you can come and see it with your own eyes if you want. It says, in God we trust. In other words, when we give our word to you that 20 American dollars is equivalent to 1 ounce of gold, our word is as good and as solid as the word of God himself. But in 1933, something strange happened that should have caused our ulama to stop eating halwa. Uncle Sam was broke. So guess what Uncle Sam did? Uncle Sam was broke. So guess what Uncle Sam did? In April 1933, Uncle Sam enacted legislation prohibiting all Americans from keeping gold. You have to return any gold that you have, not jewelry. Jewelry you can keep. Any gold that you have as coins or as bullion to Uncle Sam, and he will give you paper. And you have to trust in God that Uncle Sam's word is as good as the word of God. So all of America gave their gold to Uncle Sam, meaning the US government. If they caught you with gold after a certain date, then you could be fined 10,000 US dollars and spend 6 months as a guest of Uncle Sam in one of his prisons. So all of America went and gave their gold and took the paper. After Uncle Sam had collected all the gold, guess what he did? He gave his word, but he changed his word. This is called values. These are the people who today rule the world. They gave their word, And they broke their word. Uncle Sam changed the price of gold from $20 an ounce of gold to $35 an ounce of gold. Huh? The American people woke up that morning and said, our own government ripped us off? Yes, it was your own government that ripped you off. And then Uncle Sam made it known, you better come back and buy your gold quick before I change the price again. So the American people had to go and buy back their gold from Uncle Sam at $35 an ounce. And in the process, Uncle Sam ripped off the American people of almost half of their wealth. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, this transaction is one based on deception, through which you get a profit to which you are not entitled. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam described this as riba. Why did this happen? Because the difference between real money and paper money, money which is sunnah and paper money, is that money which is sunnah is money in which the value of the money is in the money. Someone should teach that to the Saudis. Go teach it to the Saudis who want to teach Islam to all the rest of the world. Go teach it to the Saudis. The value of the money is in the money. The definition of the paper money is that the value of the money is no longer in the money, and so the value can be changed. Every time the value is changed, the value goes down. What happens when the value of money goes down? The first thing is that there is a massive transfer of wealth from the masses to that predatory elite, which in this case was the government, Uncle Sam. The masses lost half of their wealth, almost half. That's the first thing that happens when the value of the paper money goes down. What's the second thing that happens? The answer is this. I worked for the whole month. I got my salary in gold. Could buy a camel. Took it home. Put it underneath the pillow. Took it out after 5 years. You could still buy the camel. 10 years, you could still buy the camel. But when I get my salary in paper now, you could buy a camel, take it home, put it underneath the pillow. Few years later, when I take it out, can't buy a camel anymore. Could only buy a jackass now. So now I am beginning to feel like a jackass because someone has ripped me off. Where did my money go? If you could answer that question, where did your money go? Who took your money? And how did they take your money? You would understand the game that they're playing. We used to have men like that. In North America, we had one Islamic scholar who was like that, and then they killed him. A man named Malcolm X. He didn't have a PhD from Al-Azhar, but he could see better than any Sheikh. Who took my money? And how did they take him? Did they take it? They had riba in their blood.
They used a blanket when Shaitan was in their blanket.
Alright, you come close by me here. MashaAllah, he's a brave boy, eh? Sit down. I make a dua that one day you'll also sit here on the chair. And you'll also give the lecture, inshallah. A few years later, I take the money out of my pillow. Can't buy a jackass anymore. Can only buy a goat. A few years later, can't buy a goat anymore. Can only buy murgi. Dajaja. Chicken. I mean, you got to eat a lot of halwa not to be able to see that this is haram. But the distinguished muftis of Islam still have to declare that this paper money is haram. The rip-off has taken place. The thieves have looted everything. Our people are now in miserable poverty, destitution, imprisoned in that poverty. كَادَ الْفَقْرُ أَنْ يَكُونَ كُفْرًا, said the Prophet ﷺ, that this poverty and destitution can lead a people to kufr, and that is what is happening in many parts of the world. But the mufti still cannot see that this is haram. You will not get a fatwa from the mufti that this is haram, much less to get a fatwa from the mufti that this is riba. How is it taking place? They started with gold, paper being redeemable in gold. And then came 1933, when we should have woken up to see the game, but we didn't wake up. So in 1944, at the end of the Second World War, they now consolidated the system in the creation of an international monetary system now. Consolidated. The new international monetary system emerges out of the Bretton Woods Agreement in upstate New York. Every Darul Uloom should make it obligatory for the student to study the Bretton Woods Accord. You must study the Bretton Woods Accord to understand monetary economics today, so you can understand the subject of riba. Is it taught in the Darul Uloom? No, it's not. At Bretton Woods, what did they do? They said, no longer will paper be redeemable in gold. Only one paper will be chosen to be redeemable in gold. All the rest will not. The one paper which was chosen was the US dollar. So the US dollar will be redeemable in gold, but not sterling pound, and not Pakistani rupee, and not Indonesian rupiah, not Australian dollar. No, only one. So this is a major blow to the integrity of money. The second thing that they did was to declare that the only people who could come to Uncle Sam to redeem their paper for gold are governments. You and I can't do it. Only governments, only central banks. So now the entire system has lost 99% of its integrity. It has only 1% left of integrity, but those fellows are still eating halwa. 1% integrity left. That governments, central banks can go to Uncle Sam with their US dollars and demand the gold. Nobody did. From 1944 to 1971, nobody did. The Vietnam War took place in the late 60s, and Uncle Sam printed a lot of paper to finance the war. And Uncle Sam didn't have the gold to back that paper. At Bretton Woods, they had fixed the price of gold at $35 an ounce. Fixed. It is there in the Bretton Woods Accord. Uncle Sam didn't have the gold to back all that paper. So in September 1971, the British government came in one Friday evening perhaps with $3 billion and said, Uncle Sam, we want the gold. Uncle Sam knew that the game was up. The game was up. Because come Monday morning, guess who is going to be at the front of the line? Saudi Arabia. Now, who behind Saudi Arabia? Kuwait. Huh? And a whole long line of people, of government, central banks, we want the gold. So Richard Nixon retired to Camp David, and then on Sunday he had addressed the American people, and he said, we gave our word, but we don't have to keep our word. We gave our word, but we don't have to keep our word. We will no longer honor our obligation under Bretton Woods to redeem paper for gold from central banks. And so since September 1971, this may be news for some of you who have been eating halwa. Since September 1971, there is no legal link between paper and gold. It's gone. Now all that they have to do, those who want to rule the world, all that they have to do is to take control of money. Anyone who takes control of money can rule the world. And you know that when the Messiah comes, the prophet Isaiah said that when the Messiah comes, he will rule the world. But they rejected the Messiah. Say, وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا, he's a bastard. And then they say, look, he died on the cross, so he couldn't be the Messiah. And then the prophet said that Allah will send into the world one who will impersonate the Messiah. Al-Masih al-Dajjal. In order for him to impersonate the Messiah, he will have to rule the world from Jerusalem. If you want to rule the world, you have to first rule the world of money. You cannot rule the world without taking control of money. In order to take control of money, the first thing that you do is to replace real money with paper money. The second thing that you do is you de-link paper from gold. And when paper no longer has any link with gold, you now start attacking the paper so it goes down and down and down and down. When the paper money goes down and down, there is number one, a massive transfer of wealth from the masses to that blood-sucking predatory elite. The second thing that happens is that wages lose value because prices are going up. As wages lose value, people are now imprisoned in something called slave wages. Slave wages. Slave wages. And when a man is imprisoned in slave wages, you have in fact enslaved him. When you enslave a people, you can now control them. You can now rule them. I hope someone can teach this lesson to Yasser Arafat. Around the world today, because of this kind of riba involving money, which is not real money, it's paper money, around the world today, not only does wealth no longer circulate through the economy, it's worse than that. Not only are the rich now permanently rich, it's worse than that. Not only are the poor now permanently poor, it's worse than that. The rich have now grown filthy rich, and the poor have now been reduced to miserable destitution, groveling destitution, by people who go to church on Sunday morning and pretend that they're worshipping a white man who is a god of theirs. They're not even worshipping the white man who's a god. And then the others who say, no, he's not a white man, he's a black man. And then the others say, no, it's discriminating to say God is a man. God should be both a man and a woman. Yeah, that's the debate in the United States now. God is both a man and a woman. And probably tomorrow you're going to hear God is only a woman. Huh? Do you know what is the state of Indonesia today while we eating halwa? Do you know what happened 3 years ago in Indonesia to the Indonesian rupiah? The IMF had just issued a clean bill of health to Indonesia. An economy which is strong, healthy. Indonesia is a major oil producing country. Indonesia has land which is very fertile. Indonesia has a big population, energetic population. Indonesia has an abundance of mineral resources. There's no reason why Indonesia should be poor. And the IMF says that Indonesia has a very healthy economy. Suddenly, the Indonesian rupiah is attacked by the blood-sucking predatory elite in the banking centers around the world. And the Indonesian rupiah falls. It is trading at about 8,000, and within a period of 1 week, it becomes 20,000 rupiah to $1. In the process of bringing down the Indonesian money, they were able to rip off Indonesia of probably more than half of its wealth. Half of Indonesia is automatically, instantaneously reduced to below the poverty line. Half of Indonesia. And guess what is the poverty line? $29 a month. $29 a month. Because we accepted paper as money. The reason why they attacked Indonesia is because the Indonesian loves Islam. He's not passive in his Islam. He has an activism inside of him. He's prepared to fight. He's prepared to die. That's the Indonesian. So you have to demonize them, use the media to demonize them, make them look bad, and then secondly, you've got to cut their throat from inside, reduce them to destitution and poverty, groveling poverty, and then you imprison them in slavery. The same thing is happening with Turkey. The same thing. Do you know what is the state of the Turkish money now? Thanks to a man named Mustafa Kemal, who declared that the Ottoman Islamic State was backward and we must now become copycats of Europe, and establishes the modern Turkish state, which is a secular state. Okay, fine. Where has your Turkish secular state led you? What is the state of your economy? Come on, Mustafa Kemal, talk. Do you know what is the state of the Turkish lira now? Thanks to these who have betrayed Islam. Does anyone know the Turkish lira? What is the Turkish lira trading at? Anybody knows? 1.5. 1.5 million Turkish liras is equivalent to $1. And they're still eating halwa. They're still eating halwa. In other words, the masses in Turkey who are holding on to Islam, not those who are drinking the whiskey, because they're on the gravy train. Those who are holding on to Islam, those in the villages, the peasants, in the agricultural economy, these people are now reduced to the most groveling destitution and poverty, which is slavery. So they have no capacity to resist a Turkish military which now establishes a defense treaty with Israel. No, can't do it. The Turkish army, the Ottoman army, which had the whole of Europe shivering and shaking, yes, the most powerful armed force in the world. Today, guess what the Turks are doing? Turkish young men who used to be in the Ottoman army, now selling gas in New York, in Long Island. Every gas station, you work 12 hours, 12-hour shifts. You work like a dog, and you pay dog wages. You work like a dog, and you're paid dog wages. All over the United States. Turkish young men. This is where we are today because of Riba. It's worse than that. My daughter, yes, and my sister, yes, and my mother, yes, and your daughter and your sister and your mother is also now on sale for $1. For $1, you can buy her. She's on sale. She has nothing else to do to get roti, to get bread, but to sell her body. And when her body is being ripped apart by those who now attack her like savages to fulfill their lust for $1, and when the tears come down her eyes, what will Allah do to those who are still eating halwa? This is Riba today. We have introduced you to the Riba, which is the lending of money on interest. We've introduced you to the Riba, which is the rip-off. We have said in previous lectures that you could buy a chicken now with the salary that you used to buy a camel. But there's a tomorrow which is coming when you can't even buy a chicken. You can only use it as wallpaper. Wallpaper. In other words, we are anticipating the total collapse of this international monetary system. This fraudulent international monetary system, which was put in place to rip us off, and which has now ripped us off. And so now this collapses. September the 11th could have provoked the collapse of the US dollar and the US economy. It could have done it if the aircraft which was supposed to kill the President of the United States had not crashed in Pennsylvania. They attacked America because their objective is to become the ruling state in the world. They attack America and they put the blame on us. But guess what? Guess what? There will be another day in another court before another judge. And on that day, CNN won't be able to bray like a jackass anymore. Their Excellencies and their Majesties the court before another judge. And on that day, CNN won't be able to bray like a jackass anymore. Their Excellencies and their Majesties will be told, shut up! Liman al-mulkul yawm. Who is in charge today? Lillahi al-wahid al-qahhar. On that day, يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. The earth will speak, and everything which is today concealed by those who have PhDs in deception will then be revealed on that day. And we will know who attacked America on September the 11th and blamed it on the Muslims and blamed it on the Arabs. The US dollar has not collapsed because gold is being kept at this price artificially. But there is going to come an attack which will bring down the US dollar, cause it to collapse. And when the US dollar collapses, the whole world of paper money is going to collapse. When the whole world of paper money collapses, what is going to be money? Huh? Huh?
Gold, silver.
What will be money when the paper collapses? Plastic. Correct. Plastic standing for electronic money. Okay? Plastic standing for electronic money. Who is used plastic? Not governments. Not governments. Banks issue plastic. Visa, MasterCard. Banks issue plastic. So governments will no longer have the chance to make money out of paper. That's gone. Banks now control money, officially. We're not concerned with who owns the banks, that's irrelevant. We want to know who controls the banking system in the world. And it is not seditious for me to say the fact, the truth, that the Jews do control the banking system in the world. We're not talking about Banu Israel, we're talking about the European Jew. He controls the banking system in the world. If I am not allowed to speak facts, tell me. So I pack my suitcase and go. When they are now the ones who control money, and Israel wages the big war that we know is coming, and the territory of the state of Israel dramatically expands to go all the way to the river Euphrates to incorporate Iraq, which is why you had a Gulf War 10 years ago. Then Israel will become the ruling state in the world. Israel cannot become the ruling state in the world unless Israel can also control the money of the world. Israel could never control the money of the world if we had not opened the doors to Riba. So we are now paying the price for our own negligence. But at the end of the day, when the false Messiah, Al-Masih al-Dajjal, remember Al-Masih al-Dajjal is a being created by Allah. A being created by Allah, not a system, not a civilization, a being created by Allah. And one day that being will be in front of us as a human being. You will see him. He'll be a Jew. He'll be a young man, powerfully built, with curly hair. And he'll be ruling the world from Jerusalem. After Israel becomes the ruling state in the world, which is around the corner. But at the time when Al-Masih al-Dajjal emerges as ruling the world from Jerusalem, it is at that time that the Imam emerges, Imam al-Mahdi. It is at that time that the son of Mary comes down. And then what happens? There are hadiths which are located in my book. You'll find them there. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, he said that the earth will vomit from its liver columns of gold and silver. Yes, columns of gold and silver out of the earth. The introduction of real money drives away false money. False money cannot compete with real money. So that entire international monetary system of electronic money collapses when the real money comes. The hadith is there in Sahih Bukhari that Isa alayhi salam will be sharing wealth, and no one will accept zakat. The hadith is there that Imam al-Mahdi will be sharing wealth, giving away wealth. What? US dollars? Huh? Or Australian dollars? No, not this paper for the jackasses. Real money, gold and silver. Gold and silver. So long as you remain trapped within a global economy, this was last night's lecture, globalization. So long as you remain trapped within that global economy, you will get poorer and poorer, poorer and poorer. You'll be reduced to destitution, you'll be ripped off. You lose your faith, and you go down the river of no return into Jahannam. The only way you can escape is by disconnecting from the global economy, disconnecting from the global society. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, he said the time will come when you'll not be able to find a single person in all of mankind who will not be consuming riba. And if anyone were to say that he's not consuming riba, verily the dust of riba would be upon him. Verily the vapor of riba would be upon him. I am of the opinion that we have come to that moment in time when this prophecy has been fulfilled, Those who've been eating halwa, you can ask them what is their opinion. And so we are at that stage now where riba has taken total control of the whole economy around the world. You can't fight it. You cannot destroy it. No. Well, then what do? You have to disconnect from it. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, the time will come when a man, in order to preserve his faith, in order to preserve his religion, would have to flee to the mountainsides where rain falls, and take with him some sheep and goats. So my advice is, disconnect from the godless cities with their relentless grinding economic oppression. Go look for land where land is cheap and where there is water. Go build a Muslim village. And in the Muslim village, you're not going to be putting up houses worth $300,000 and $500,000. We are planning to build that village in Indonesia now. And guess how much it will cost us to build a house? A bamboo house. About $2,000 US. About $2,000. And it's going to be a beautiful bamboo house with thatched roof and cool, naturally cooled. When the son of Mary, the messenger of Allah, returns, and we offer him a choice between that bamboo house and this one for $1 million US. Which one will he choose? If that is your choice, then we can help you when you come to us with your problems and your questions of riba. But if this one is your choice, you want to have a house like this one, don't come to me for an answer, because I can't help you. So in the Muslim village we build simple houses. Simple houses. We produce our own food. So we are secure, not insecure. Security. But most of all, in the Muslim village, we'll have what we may call a micro market. A micro market. Because the macro market cannot be attacked and dislodged. No. You cannot take riba out of the macro market. But in the micro market, yes. In the micro market, we'll return to the sunnah. The money which is sunnah. So in the micro market, you will get the true value of your sweat. I asked them in the villages of Indonesia, I said, if we don't have enough money, gold and silver, to use as money in our market, what will we use as money? And do you know? Even the villagers in Indonesia were able to give me the right answer. Right away, without batting an eye. In the island of Java, they said, we're going to use rice as money. Because Java is a rice bowl. But then when I asked them the next question, that one they could not answer. What is the major problem you will face if you want to use rice as money? The answer is, the government of Indonesia has imposed price control on rice. Those who declare that we are the champions of the free market, they are the ones who impose price control. Shamelessly impose price control on rice. It is not that the government of Indonesia is buying the rice from the farmer at the true market price, okay, and then selling the rice on the market at a discounted price. No. The government of Indonesia unilaterally imposes a price for rice that is below the market price. And so the market is ripping off the rice farmer. He works and he sweats, but he does not get the fruit of his sweat. No, the blood-sucking, predatory banking system, they get the fruit of his sweat. What will we do? How can we get around this problem? of price controls? Is it halal or is it haram? A man came to the Prophet ﷺ, this hadith is in my book, and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, fix the prices, because the prices were too high in the market." The Prophet said no. He came back a second time and he came back a third time. So it must have been really hard. The Prophet said no. But he said, "I can raise my hands and pray to Allah." We can raise our hands and pray to Allah that Allah may bring down the prices by increasing supply, for example. So Islam gives to the world a completely free and fair market with no price controls. The last free and fair market the world ever had was the market of the Ottoman Islamic State. The last free and fair market that the world ever had was a market of the Ottoman Islamic State. But those who are eating halwa know nothing about this. Now, they attack the Ottoman state. They say all kind of derogatory things about it. They dismiss it. And yet it is scholars at the State University of New York, in what's the name of that place? Not Stony Brook, in upstate New York. Upstate New York. State University of New York, somewhere in upstate New York. Those scholars out there, they are the ones who did the research, non-Muslims, and they are the ones who made the declaration that the last free and fair market that the world ever had was the market of the Ottoman Islamic State. And when the Ottoman Islamic State was dismantled and Europe took control of the market around the world, the free and the fair market disappeared, and now it's a market of thieves, ripping off all of mankind of their wealth. I have given to you tonight the broad picture of the subject. First study this broad picture and try to assess the implications for us. What will Allah do to us? How great must be His anger? Before you ask me questions about how can I buy a house in Sydney, before I end, let me add one more point. Those who are attacking us operate with PhDs in deception. If there are 10 Muslims and they're able to get 6 of them to borrow money and interest from the bank to buy a house or to buy a car or to build an Islamic school, 4 Muslims have resisted. So they're not content until they come and get those 4. وَلَن تَرْضَى عَنْكَ الْيَهُودَ وَلَا النَّصَارَ حَتَّى تَتَّبِيَ مِلَّتَهُمْ. They want to get the other 4 now. The ones who want to remain faithful to Allah and His Messenger. So how do they get them? They get them with something called an Islamic bank. Yes, an Islamic bank. Guess what the Islamic bank does? I have to tell you this one before I finish. What the Islamic bank does, 9 times out of 10, is to give you backdoor riba. Example, probably the most prominent of all examples of all the trading of the Islamic banks. In Islam, the norm of a business transaction is a cash transaction, and a credit transaction is the exception to the norm. A credit transaction will be one in which you're given time to pay, okay? The norm of a business transaction in Islam is a cash transaction. And so in Islam, market price is always cash price. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu came into the market and found a man selling his goods at less than the market price. Umar said to him, get out, raise your price or get out of our market. You lower your price to cut the throat of your competitors. And when they collapse, then you take control of the market and you raise your price. So, market price is cash price. A house is on sale for $100,000. I don't have the 100,000 to buy it. Islamic Bank says no problem. Islamic Bank says we'll buy it for 100,000 and then we'll sell it to you for 400,000. What did you say? Huh? I didn't hear you. We'll buy it for 100,000 and we'll sell it to you for 400,000. Huh? Why would I buy from you for 400,000 when it's on sale for 100,000? If I have to buy from you cash, then someone should make an appointment for me with a psychiatrist. Huh? I'm mentally unsound. No, you're not buying from me cash. It's a credit transaction. Oh, I see. So I pay you 400,000 and you give me 20 years to pay. Why am I paying an extra 300,000? Why? There's only one honest answer to that question. There's only one honest answer to that question. All the rest belong to the garbage bin. The only reason why I'm paying an extra $300,000 is because you've given me 20 years to pay. That's the only reason. And so time equals money. You are earning money through time, and that is riba. But Islamic Bank says no. There is no lending of money here. There is no loan. This is murabaha. Murabaha, where both the buyer and the seller agree on the selling price with an increase. Murabaha. No, it ain't murabaha. It's backdoor riba. Around the world today, Islamic banks, Islamic financial institutions are peddling murabaha and declaring that this is a halal transaction, and there are no shortage of muftis. If you are comfortable with this murabaha, I have not been appointed to stop you. No. But those of you who can see that this is backdoor riba, you would avoid it. They didn't get you to the front door, so they won't get you to the back door. And then there is that other famous method of hiding the riba in a lease. A lease. But the interest is embedded in the lease contract. The price at which you are leasing the article includes the interest in the price. And so where you think that this is a straight lease contract, a rental contract, it is more than that. It is a rental contract in which the riba is incorporated into the rental price. Do not therefore allow yourself to be trapped by backdoor riba.